My name is Jeff Morgan. I'm from Dallas, Texas. I've got a couple of series of videos that are going to be coming out very quickly here, so I wanted to give a little recap about what they are first. So the first set, maybe it's 3 or 4, probably 3, will be of a phone call that I had with Kash Jackson, who is currently in jail in Illinois. Now, Kash I've known since about 2017, I think it was. I met him met him in person first time in Washington, D.C. at the Restoring Freedom rally. And Kash had been leading an across-the-country trek going from Washington State, culminating in the D.C. area to protest the family courts. When we got up there, I believe that there were several hundred people that had joined him throughout the country. But that's when I first met him, and it was to protest the violence that goes on in our family courts. And when I say violence, that's exactly what I mean. The violence against a parent, when the court deprives a parent of his or her fundamental right to parent the child. Whether you look at the Constitution itself or case law, parents have a fundamental right to parent their children, and the state should only deprive them of that right in very strict circumstances. There's got to be certain criteria that are met. When it comes down to the issue of divorce and child support, those criteria are thrown out the window, and one parent usually becomes a visitor to his or to her children. Happens by far more often to men, but it also happens to women. So mothers or fathers can be kicked out of their kids' lives, and this often leads to grandparents being kicked out of their grandchildren's lives, or aunts and uncles being kicked out of their nieces and nephews' lives. This is a very big evil that is taking place in our society, but that's how I first met Kash. Kash right now currently is in jail in Illinois. Now, Judge Joseph Salvi in Illinois, it appeared had a personal vendetta against Kash, and I got this from talking with Mama Jackson. I've heard this from other people as well, but Mama Jackson, Kash's mom, at the beginning thought that Joseph Salvi was a decent guy until Kash decided to challenge what the judge was doing. And it appears thereafter that Judge Joseph Salvi exercised his personal vendetta against Kash in various ways. And currently, Kash has been in jail for about a year. He's in jail on a $1 million bond. A $1 million bond. This is unheard of. You could be a terrorist and be in jail for less than that. You could have murdered somebody. You could have raped multiple people and be in jail for much less of a bond than that. In Kash's case, he wanted to be involved in his children's life. And again, this is a personal vendetta, I believe, that was exercised against Kash by Judge Joseph Salvi. Anyway, the next 3 videos, I believe it is, are going to be discussing some of this stuff with Kash from his jail cell when he gave me a call earlier this week from his jail in Illinois. And those videos will be, they're going to be largely audios. They're going to be audios. They're going to be highly edited, only because there was a lot of interaction between me and Kash, and I don't think you want to hear from me. I think you want to hear from Kash instead. So those first 3 videos will be primarily about Kash. The next 8 videos, I believe it is, will be about a person who was running for the Senate in Pennsylvania. He was a senatorial candidate, Sean Parnell. Sean Parnell, another veteran, another combat veteran, an Army Ranger who did not like to see people being bullied. He joined the military. He was in Afghanistan fighting for his country. Everything was fine with him and his wife once they had a divorce and everything, except that he found out that in many instances a person can make a false allegation against another person to try to use the courts to take away a father or a mother's rights to have access to their children. And that's what Sean had to face. This is important, and Republicans should pay particular attention to this, because the case can be made that the entire balance of power in the United States Senate was shifted because of a family court case. You see, Sean Parnell was a Republican candidate running for Senate at the time, and in Pennsylvania, he was doing a much better job. He was a better candidate by far than Dr. Oz. Dr. Oz came in after Sean Parnell had to drop out, and the reason Sean Parnell dropped out, again, was because of family court, false allegations, which of course have no punishment in our family court. And he would have been better off had he just walked away and said, you know what, I'm going to be a visitor in my children's life. That's all I'm going to do. I'm going to be a visitor. But he was fighting to be involved in his children's life. He was fighting for that which was his fundamental right. He was fighting for that which he fought for in other countries, to defend our way of life, to defend other countries against brutality and abuse, and yet he was abused by the anti-family courts. The judge basically said to him that if you become a senator, he was going to award the children to the mother because as a senator, he would be highly involved in things and he might not have enough time to be a good father. This was a judge imposing his opinion upon Sean Parnell. Sean said that the most important thing in his life was not running for Senate, but his children. Nevertheless, he still lost what he had prior to this whole family court thing. And he conducted this interview with Megyn Kelly. Megyn Kelly, formerly from Fox News, now doing her own thing. And this was an interview that somebody made me aware of, so I just took out the portion from that interview. I split it down into 8 sections. If you want to see it, the link will be provided so that you can see Megyn Kelly's interview with Sean. I'm not trying to take anything. I'm not trying to monetize things off of her. My channel is not monetized. I believe her channel is, so feel free to watch it there if you wish to do so. I'll put down the timestamp so that you can watch the entire thing in its entirety, but I've just tried to split things up into segments, basically for ease of watchers, so that they can watch it in certain segments. I try to keep everything primarily between maybe 6 to 8, 10, 12 minutes, something like that, versus having to sit through a whole 45-minute video. Many times I know I've been to through some of these things and I'm half an hour into it and I'm like, is there a point to this video? Is it really worth watching? I don't want to waste your time, and I try to divide things up into segments so that it's more respectful, I think, to you. But if you want to watch the entire thing, I would say go to Megyn Kelly's channel, and again, I will be providing a link for Megyn Kelly's channel. The third veteran I just got to interview a couple of days ago, actually, and her name is Olga Ventura. She is a 26-year naval officer. She was in Afghanistan. She was actually part of the medical team that helped to keep alive and gave medical attention to Dan Crenshaw, of all people. She was in theater there. She was, this was not something that she volunteered for. It was something that she had to do because her country, and at the time the president was Barack Obama, her country sent her to Afghanistan. And then she came back and she had to go a second time shortly after she came back. And during this time, her ex-husband had the idea in his mind that she was over there like having affairs or something like that. She was serving our heroes in theater. And he also had decided that he was going to bring up a former girlfriend of his from Mexico. Now they have, I believe it's 3 children. And when they first went through the divorce, Olga was advocating for 50-50, not for herself, but for her ex-husband. She wanted to make sure that the children had both a mother and father in their lives. And yet he was able now to use a system to basically become the primary parent and to exclude her from the children's lives by and large. And this has taken place in Rockwall, Texas. Now, Rockwall, Texas is where my journey in some of this stuff began. So I have a special affinity in my heart for the anti-family courts in Rockwall, Texas. And when I hear of people going through some of these things in Rockwall, Texas, whether it's in front of the corrupt Judge Brett Hall or the corrupt Judge David Rakow, I will go there if I can. I can't always do this, but I have been into Judge Brett Hall's court a few times, both personally as a court observer, and I've also been in David Rakow's court, I believe, for 3 different individuals, probably half a dozen times, more than half a dozen times. And I went in there to watch to see what was going on. Unfortunately, Judge David Rakow told Olga that if she wanted to be a mother and a parent, she should not have joined the military. Of all the audacious things to say for an anti-family court judge to impose this upon her and say, well, if you wanted to be a parent, you shouldn't have joined the military, that is completely outrageous. And I would say to Judge David Rakow, well, if you wanted to be a good person, you would not have become an anti-family, family destruction judge. That's my response back to you with that. Olga has been an outstanding person. There's some articles that have been written up about her service. Considered just a wonderful person. She has a detective in Rockwall that was going to testify about the abuse that she was suffering at the hands of her ex-husband. And even with the abuse, she still wanted him to have 50-50. But unfortunately, the judge would not let him speak. The Detective Nagy out of Rockwall, had come to court a couple of times at least, I think maybe up to 4 times. He was willing to testify, about the abuse that her ex-husband had exercised against her. And yet Judge David Rakow, the judge who told Olga, well, if you want to be a parent, you shouldn't have joined the military, would not let him have the opportunity to speak. There's also another key player out there, and that would be the District Attorney Kendra Culpepper. I've known Kendra and her husband, Jim Pruitt. Jim Pruitt was also an attorney, a divorce attorney. I've spoken with him on other occasions. I've sat in his office. He was also the mayor of Rockwall. He's known to be in a place of authority out there. Kendra Culpepper, I believe it was last year, maybe the year before, she was awarded the District Attorney of the Year for the state of Texas. About 3 years ago, I met her at an event in Rockwall at the Harbor. I think it was at the Hilton. It was a young Republican sort of thing. I wanted to interview her about the issue of 2503, which in Texas refers to interference with child custody. That is a state jail felony in the state of Texas. It is not a civil matter. It is a state jail felony. The district attorney should be prosecuting these too often, as in Kendra's case, she did not. Now, her defense to me was, first off, she wanted to know if I was going to be mean to her. Simply by asking her questions, that's being mean. I don't know what she would think about. They've known me because I've spoken very forcefully at different events, and I'm not going to be shut up about this. Our anti-family courts are destroying our families, and they're destroying children, grandchildren, parents, grandparents, uncles, aunts. They're destroying a lot of people, and yet they expect us to be quiet and to remain quiet about these things because they're the attorneys. They're the district attorneys. They're the judges. We just need to bow down to them. Oh, worship the judge who's put on his robe. And just at whatever he says, that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to just think, wisdom has flown from this court because the judge has spoken. In many instances, injustice is being dispensed on a regular basis. It is not justice, it is injustice. Parents' fundamental rights to parent their children are being violated grossly, for the sake of profit, and often because a judge has a relationship with an attorney. Like, for example, Brett Hall, who was a good buddy of Charlie Schurenberg. And Charlie, by the way, was another anti-family attorney who is now dead and probably in hell. And you know what? It is what it is. But that's where he is right now, to the best of my knowledge. But Brett Hall said, well, he and Charlie were good friends. You know, and Brett Hall did not do his duties as a judge, in my opinion. And I'm speaking from my personal case here. And, you know, Judge Hall said, well, maybe I saw the light, that he was just doing what he could do. I don't believe Judge Brett Hall. I also, by the way, knew his father, Congressman Ralph Hall. And I don't know if Brett Hall thinks that he should get a pass because his father was a congressman and because he's the judge. But he also conducts an anti-family court. And like I said, it was because of Judge Brett Hall and later in Justice of the Peace Jack James, Precinct 1, who is now out of office as well, because of these two people that I got involved in this fight. And that's why we are seeking to overturn the entire system, to bring about justice, to bring about reform. And I understand that there are many people here that don't want to see this. The anti-family law industry, the attorneys, the judges, there's too much money to be made by destroying your family. Anyway, to get back to Olga, I've sat in on court with her probably 4 times. One of the things that David Rakow does, instead of having everything come before him, sometimes he puts people in breakout rooms, or he consult in chambers. He keeps the public from watching what is going on. And at that time, the individual who's in there can often be abused either by his or her attorney, the opposing attorney, whatever. And when I say by his or her attorney, you've got to understand the attorney, even your attorney, often is friends with the opposing attorney. And often they're friends with the judges. And this is a game. It's a game in which they take money from you, they rob you. There was one point when Judge David Rakow raised his voice about it. Well, if they want to spend another $30,000, that's up to them. It's good for retail. But here's the reality in family courts. When you have anti-family judges, anti-family attorneys arguing unconstitutional issues, seeking to take a parent out of a kid's life, the good parent will fight back. And the judges often let the bad parent take a hold of things because it's good for retail, makes them more money. And then they criticize the people. I've been in the court with Olga, with her husband Mario. I've been in for a couple of other people too. There was one military vet that I will say that Judge David Rakow got it right on. I sat in the courtroom with him. He had to hire an attorney. And the interesting thing about this attorney is the attorney that helped him there, at least that law firm, was also the same law firm that really threw Olga under the bus. So I'm going to be talking more about Olga in particular here. And again, I spoke with Olga and with her husband Mario, and I would like you to listen to these because, once again, Olga Ventura, she is a 100% disabled vet, 26-year-old naval officer. She was a medical officer. She even cared for people on SEAL teams. And I've got individuals that I could talk with that would testify about the care that she gave. Again, even Dan Crenshaw, who was in the United States Congress, was cared for by Olga Ventura. But Olga, what you didn't know was this: if you wanted to be a parent, you shouldn't have joined the military. Quote from Judge David Rakow. So anyway, I invite you to watch these. These are going to be the last series that I'm doing in the military for veterans. This was designed to be a Veterans Day special. Unfortunately, it's taken me a little bit longer to edit them and to get them up than I had originally hoped that would take place. But I want you to remember that, again, that our veterans are being abused by our anti-family courts. Their military service is being used against them, such as when a judge tells a mother, well, if you wanted to be a mother, if you wanted to be a parent, you shouldn't have joined the military. A lot of injustice takes place there, and for our vets, I want to say that we are fighting for you. We're fighting to see that this type of injustice no longer takes place. We want to see the tide change, the tide stopped, and also the tide change. And it's not just for the veterans. We're talking about every parent, every mother, every father. Your ability to parent is a fundamental right that these anti-family court judges think that they can indiscriminately take away from you or deprive you of for any reason, for no reason. They can make up a reason. Just whichever attorney is closest to them, whichever attorney perhaps has donated the most of their campaign, will suddenly find it in our best interest, in the child's best interest, to side with that attorney. We've got to clean up these courts. And for the Republican Party, you need to take a look at this too. We've talked about how the breakdown of the family is the number one factor in the way people have voted in the last election for President Trump and President Biden. The issue of whether you were married or single was the biggest, most important factor. And when you have single parents raising kids, you are raising up a generation of Democrats. And even Olga, very strong, conservative lady this last election, no longer has faith in the Republican Party. Except for just a couple of people, she voted independent. We cannot vote for Democrats because they are the party of family destruction, but we are no longer voting for Republicans in some instances because the Republicans are complicit in this. And the only way I can look at it is this: we've got to get rid of this label of Democrat and Republican, and we've got to look at the people that defend traditional values and morality and the cultural Marxists. And the cultural Marxists are those people who say that somehow the traditional values, traditional family, traditional morality, those are oppressive. Those have been the things that have enslaved you and your kids. And we need to throw off those shackles. We need to institute a new morality that says it's okay if your boy thinks he's a girl, if your girl thinks he's a boy. It's okay if a teacher teaches your kids something that you don't approve of. We know best. Cultural Marxists know best. Unfortunately, our Republicans are caving to the cultural Marxists much too frequently today. Our Speaker of the House will probably appoint cultural Marxists to chairs down in Austin. That's what's happening right now in the state of Texas. We are a Republican state, we're a red state, but a lot of our Republicans are tainted with cultural Marxism. And when you go to family courts, you will see that cultural Marxism is on display as they seek to ruin the families and destroy families and destroy the relationship of children with their parents and extended family. If you go back to Marx and Engels, one of the things they talked about was the abolition of the family. And you know what? It's not happening through political means. Well, it actually is at this point right now. But they've been able to do that because our anti-family courts have been doing this for years and years and years. If you are an American who believes in traditional values, if you're a Catholic who believes in traditional values, Protestant, if you are a Democrat or Republican, you must stand against this cultural Marxism, especially as it pertains to our family courts. And if you are Republicans, Quit caving to these people. They try to make you feel like, feel guilty, or they get divorce attorney lobbyists like Steve and Amy Breslin, cultural Marxists to the hilt. They're being paid handsomely to talk to you and to try to get you to become cultural Marxists. But they will not tell you, hey, I'm cultural Marxist Steve Breslin, I'm cultural Marxist Amy Breslin, I'm cultural Marxist so-and-so. No, they're telling you, well, this is what we've seen, this is what we think. They are lying to you, and you are being duped by these cultural Marxists. And if you lose your party, it's going to be because you are no longer standing up for morality. By the way, Democrats stand up for morality all the time. Actually, what they stand up for is immorality. They stand up for a morality that is foreign to traditional values. They stand up for the progressive morality, the morality that says it's abusive if you try to parent your child and not let him or her do anything that he wants to do or she wants to do, or be anything that he wants to be or she wants to be. There's a big difference between parenting a child and acquiescing to children and saying, child knows best. No, parents know best. God has given you the primary responsibility of rearing your children. The state, who wants to take over that function, actually is disregarding the Constitution, it's disregarding case law, and it's trying to dupe you. When you go in there, the judge tells you what the best interest of the child is. The judge is lying to you. The judge does not know. The judge is a stranger. You are letting strangers rear your children. You are letting divorce attorneys tell a judge who doesn't know your children what the best interest of your children is. You are letting child custody evaluators, another money-making scam and scheme that's going on in the state of Texas, say, well, this is what we think the best interest of the child is. You are letting divorce attorneys come in there and destroy your children in the name of the best interest of the children. I have even had judges that said, we are not destroying families, we are rearranging families. That's what we're doing. We're rearranging families. The new and improved version of a family where the stepdaddy or stepmommy becomes the real new daddy or new mommy. You, as a mother or father in the state of Texas, have the fundamental right, the inalienable right to parent your children.
Well, if you wanted to be a mother, if you wanted to be a parent, you shouldn't have joined the military.